MCP servers are pretty cool. They allow you to extend the capabilities of a large language model by providing it with custom tools to interact with the environment. You can retrieve information from the external environment to improve the usefulness of the outputs. For example, the Microsoft Docs MCP server allows you to get information from Microsoft Docs, and you can also get information from Fabric or Power BI itself, like how many workspaces you have, how many items are in a particular workspace, or even item contents and properties. Now, when it really becomes interesting is when you can actually change things in that environment. For example, you can add or remove workspaces, items, and even the contents of a particular item or multiple items at once. You can change the formatting of a report, add or remove visuals, or even create reports from scratch using these types of tools. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to end up with a good or useful report, but these are all things that are technically possible today. I'm going to tell you more information about that next week with some articles and videos that we're making on SQL BI and Tabular Editor, but what I'd like to talk to you about today is something different. MCP servers are not some kind of panacea for data analytics or anything else. They're definitely cool, they're definitely useful, but they don't just solve all the problems. For example, there are some security concerns with MCP servers, especially when you're using open source MCP servers. Now, there's no official MCP server available for Fabric or Power BI today, at least not yet. But what if I told you that you didn't need an MCP server to be able to interact with Fabric and Power BI in natural language? What if I told you that you could just give an agent a tool from Microsoft and it can use that tool to interact with your Fabric tenant, the same way that you would with a really big MCP server that can use all the APIs? This is possible today using the Fabric command line. You can give the Fabric command line tool to an agent and it can use it to get basically any information from your Fabric tenant, to change information and execute any of the Power BI and Fabric APIs. Now, what is the Fabric command line? Well, it's the Fabric command line interface, or CLI, and it allows you to execute commands from a terminal to be able to get information from or modify things in Microsoft Fabric. All you need to do to get it is you need to install Python, make sure it's available in your path environment variables, and then you need to install it by just running the command in Python pip install ms fabric cli. If you do this, then you can use the Fabric command line. Now, I recommend that you check the official site on their GitHub pages, as it will explain commands, examples, for example, how to authenticate, and this is really easy to get up and go. You just run the command fab auth login, and then in the browser, you log in, and then you can start using it. So let's go ahead and do that. We have a terminal open here in VS Code. I've already logged in, so we can just type fab ls, and then we're going to get all of our workspaces. That's it, 6 characters, incredibly easy. I love this tool. I've been using it already for a couple of months and it is amazing. So let's clear this so you can actually see. So fab ls, and let's just get the space parts workspaces, for example. So we have 4. So let's see what is in the space parts dev workspace. So we'll see the contents of that workspace. We see we have a semantic model, we have a report. So let's get the definition of the semantic model. For example, we have space parts. Let's go space parts dev.workspace/space parts.semantic model. And then we'll use the Q flag and definition to get the definition. And this will give us the full definition of the semantic model as if we used the API. Very, very easy. We don't have to mess around with the APIs. We don't have to parse all that response. We can just get it back just by using this command. And there's cleaner ways to be able to get certain properties and parts of the definition as well. Now, you might be looking at this and you might be saying, like, Kurt, I have never used a terminal before. I have never used a command line tool before. Why would I use this? Well, that's the cool thing. You don't. You give it to an agent, and then the agent uses it for you. You just have to give that agent the right instructions and examples to do what you want it to do, and then it runs the commands and gets the results to answer your questions or to make changes in Fabric. For example, we can use Claude Code. So I will get Claude Code here. This is a coding agent from Anthropic that lives in the terminal. So it's just the same thing as when you're using Claude Desktop or whatever, but it's in a terminal, and it's very good at using these command line tools. Now this works with other tools as well, like GitHub Copilot or Gemini CLI, whatever, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm a pretty big fan of Claude Code. I've been using it for about 4 months, and it is pretty awesome. I'm not going to explain in detail what it is, how to use it, all this stuff, but I will explain that in a couple of different content pieces coming up, including a white paper that we wrote at SQL BI. So talking a little bit more about the application and examples. Back to the main event here. Let's go and let's use a specialized agent where I've taught it how to use the Fabric CLI for the things that I want to do, and we can ask it some questions. We can say, find the space parts dev workspace and tell me how many items of each type are in it, and then check the sales report that's in that workspace. So check only the full definition and tell me how many visuals there are of each type. Return your answer in concise, well-formatted bullet points. Now, with these instructions, the agent can run off and it will actually start to execute the Fabric CLI commands and retrieve that information. So I'm just making my request in natural language. This specialized agent, who has instructions that I've curated for it, is going to execute those commands and retrieve this information. This is a really convenient and easy way to be able to use the Fabric command line, but again, it's not some kind of panacea. It's very difficult to create instructions that are precise and concise and that the agent will follow all the time, because that's something that just doesn't happen due to the nature of this underlying technology. You can already appreciate what it's doing here is it's already found the report. It's already going through and it's checking what's available. It's counting the number of visuals by type to be able to get the information it needs to answer my questions. Now, one of the challenges I've seen with using the command line like this rather than an MCP server is that it tends to be a bit verbose, and it sometimes can kind of go a little off the rails because it's less specific. But I used no MCP servers here, and you can appreciate that we already got an answer to our question. We can see that we have 2 reports, 3 semantic models, and a total of 9 visuals of various different types. So again, no MCP servers used, just the command line with this specialized agent who's executing those commands for me. But this is not just limited to getting metadata. I can again use any of the Fabric or Power BI APIs. For instance, I can ask it, go to the fit workspace, check the fitness model, and tell me how many exercises there are per muscle group. So it's going to get this information by using a DAX query, and it's using the execute queries API in order to do that. So again, no MCP servers, it's just going and retrieving this information so I can chat with my data in the same kind of way as I would be using an MCP server, except here I'm using the official command line tool from Microsoft. So this is really, really beneficial. Now, of course, the key difference here is I'm not able to get like the nice visualizations that I would get in Claude Desktop. And again, it's just going to be giving me these answers in a terminal, but you can appreciate how valuable this is, especially when you're using this to retrieve information to enhance your development. Remember, this is a coding agent that specializes in being able to write and modify files, for example, that I have open in Visual Studio Code. So I can retrieve information in order to enhance certain development tasks that I'm doing for items in Fabric, like reports. And we've seen here that it can get this information. For example, it can get all of the information about the number of exercises per muscle group. It got this with a DAX query that it just ran against my semantic model. But if you want to see an example of how I'm using the Fabric command line with like specialized agents and other approaches, combining this with the MCP servers and so on and so forth, Next week, we are releasing a couple of articles and a white paper for SQL BI that explains in detail how you can use AI and agents for BI development, using these kind of approaches to be able to enhance development tasks. This is just scratching the surface. There's a lot of very cool stuff that you can do, but I think it's incredibly important to keep in mind that this isn't just something that works. It's not magic. It still requires a ton of time and effort to set up the instructions, to incrementally and iteratively improve it, and to also make sure that your environment and processes are set up to support these types of tools. That's it. That's all I wanted to show. Hope it was useful, hope it was interesting, and if you want to know more, keep an eye out next week on SQL BI and the Tabular Editor blog, especially on SQL BI, where we'll be releasing that white paper. So that's it. I'll see you next time.